Hello, everybody, and thank you for being here at the celebration of a great civil rights icon and a master of labor. He is one of my heroes, Mr. Horace Sheffield. And today we have a group of incredible men and women who are trendsetters with the UAW and labor, and they're going to speak about a great man, Mr. Horace Sheffield.
The state of Michigan in general, and the city of Detroit in particular, are noted for the struggle of working people to find a decent way of life. The history of struggle will not be complete unless it reflects the contribution of a particular man who has done so much beyond the state of Michigan and across this nation. The name of Horace Sheffield should be a name known by every worker across this nation who has struggled for a decent life and a decent way of living. Many of us are so pleased at the opportunity to have worked with Horace Sheffield as he made his mark in the field of labor. A committed trade unionist, a longtime fighter for justice and equal rights and civil rights and human rights. We in the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists are pleased and lucky to have had the opportunity of working with Horace during the course of his contribution to the well-being of working people. Now, I thank you, Mike, and the Detroit chapter of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists for allowing us an opportunity to pay tribute to Horace Sheffield.
I met Horace back in 1974. You know, we started the coalition in 1972 in Chicago and really had what I'd like to refer to as our constitutional convention in Washington, D.C. a year later. Then the next convention was actually held in Detroit. Horace was the shaker and mover of that convention. You know, getting people like Coleman Young, Miss Henderson from the council, and these type of people to come and share with us there in Detroit. When I say Horace was a shaker and mover, not only in the labor community, but also in the community at large. Anywhere you go and you mention the name Horace Sheffield, you could get things done. Horace Sheffield was that kind of a person.
Now we want to bring in a history maker. There was a good friend of mine. I remember when he first told me he had the new job. I said, "Hey man, you ready to be a Jeopardy question? Who is the first Black president of the UAW?" Rory Gamble. Joining us now is the first Black president of the UAW, but more importantly, President Emeritus, like Mr. Lucy is of CBTU, Mr. Roy Gamble, President Emeritus of the UAW. Roy?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael, and blessings and great thanks to Brother Lucy and all of their struggles and efforts before all of us to make us today what we all have become. I too was very blessed by Brother Sheffield and his son and his granddaughter. It is Horace established a standard of leadership that has gone on through generations and touched us all. His efforts early on in his demand for Black leadership in the process of trade unionism, along with people like Brother Lucy, has brought all of us to where we are today. It made me a better man when I was tapped on the shoulder to become president of the United Auto Workers at a very crucial time when the union was in serious trouble. Some people look at it different ways. Some people look at it like, well, you know, it was going in the tank and they give it to a Black man. I look at it very differently. I look at it that they know we have always thrived in the struggle, and having that experience, I carried that into the job. And we were successful in fighting off a government takeover and saving the union from real critical federal control. And we all know when that happens to a union, you're very weakened, you lose your clout and your strength. But you look at the UAW today, they just went through a very successful round of Big Three negotiations. They used their strength, they used their solidarity, and all that was made possible by the struggles that went on to save that our union from a federal takeover. The examples to carry that fight on came from people like Brother Horace Sheffield, Brother Lucy, and many more.
And joining us now is the director of UAW Region 1A, who is a history maker in her own right. We're honoring a great man, Horace Sheffield, who had a legacy in history, and she is in the middle of creating her legacy as she makes history. She is the first African-American woman to be elected as a UAW Region 1A director, the director of UAW Region 1A, Miss Laura Dickerson. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome, welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Now, Laura, you have been in CBTU, you served on the executive board. Tell us about Horace Sheffield. What does he mean to you in terms of his legacy and the things that he has done in his career?
Well, first, let me say this. It's an honor to be able to speak on someone who's been a profound leader in the city of Detroit for many years. I grew up in the city of Detroit, and if you did, you know the name Horace Sheffield, as you do his son, Horace Sheffield III, and of course now his granddaughter, Mary Sheffield. So it is quite a legacy which started with him. And so you think about the organizations that were important to you during your youth. Dabo, I believe, was on Grand River at a point in time. And I remember catching the bus and passing that building, but always seeing people going inside, and the legacy of Dabo and what it meant to the community and the surrounding community. It meant a lot for people who didn't have a lot of resources at that point in time. His son continues that legacy and tradition of the Detroit Association of Black Organizations. That meant the world, the TULC, for which our trade union leadership council, back in the day, they talk about how it originated, and it really came because we wanted to train people who look like you and I in the trades, skilled trades. And so they offered courses and classes. It wasn't just a meeting space. They took action in the community to support our folks in labor, our African-American people, our Black folks in labor. And so it's been there for many years and been a great resource. And that, of course, he was very instrumental in that at that point in time. When you think about CBTU, you think about the fact that he was the president of CBTU during, a time where, much like the time that we're in now, people are demanding things because they have a voice. And that voice is being heard. But, back then, of course, for African Americans, we weren't afforded certain opportunities that other folks were afforded. Another big thing with Horace is service to the community. We talk about serving our community. He did. If you look at his history, he worked at the Rouge facility. He was very active in labor. At that point in time, and 600 was very active in the civil rights movement during those days. That's my local, of course. It's your local, Michael Joseph, Roy Gamble's local. But it's one to be very proud of. I wouldn't be sitting here today if it weren't for the fact that they felt that there needed to be diversity amongst the ranks. I happen to be the first African-American woman in the 87 year plus history at this point of our great international union, UAW. What an honor it is to serve in this position. But I couldn't be here if there wasn't a Horace Sheffield, if there wasn't a Horace Sheffield III. You know, Mary Sheffield, when you look at the work that she does in the community, and I have to say this, we just ended our, or just in the process of ending, I should say, we're ratifying the contracts for Ford, but the stand-up strike, the historic stand-up strike, and I can say that Mary Sheffield reached out to make sure that she supported our people who are on the picket lines. That plays to the tradition of her family. Of course, you know, her grandfather, that's something that he would have done, her father. It goes to the roots of who we are.
Well, thank you. Well, before we let you go, do you have some words of encouragement or advice that you can give to our members here in Detroit? As a matter of fact, CBTU chapters all over the country of what we can be doing to strengthen our commitment and our work.
You know, I would say we need to be steadfast in what we do for our unions. We have to participate. We have to be active. We have to let people know we're there. We have to demand that there are things that we want. We have to have a voice, and we have to use that voice so that people understand who we are, what we want, and where we're going. The labor movement and civil rights have long been partnered together. We can't let that be forgotten. People died for what we have today. People fought for what we have today, and we have to continue that well into the future.
And we're here with my brother, Jimmy Settles, UAW Vice President, retired, and we wish him well in his retirement, but we're going to put him to work today as we're going to talk about a man he respects and admires, Horace Sheffield Jr. Jimmy, tell us a little bit about your relationship with Horace Sheffield.
Wow. My relationship with Mr. Sheffield goes back when I was an adolescent. I can remember he was very active in the community. My dad and him were very good friends. They worked in the same location at Ford, the Dearborn Iron Foundry. And they were both community activists. And Horace, when I first met at TULC, Trade Union Leadership Council, and you might say, what you doing up there at that young age? But what we used to do on the weekends, and particularly on Saturdays, we used to pass out leaflets. At that time, the Trade Union Leadership was organizing the community to form block clubs, but also to be political activists. So we used to go up to TULC and pass out. They would give us assignments to pass out literature in the community. But what they also used to do, and which I really, really loved, when we pass out the literature, we had to attend these classes. The classes was like, we want you to know what you're passing out, because we pass out this literature, somebody might have to shoot back. And at that time, we were just doing it so we could get that little 25-cent and popping a hot dog. But I really got intrigued into what we were doing and what they were doing in the community. They were actually galvanized. And I never forget, as you know, TLC was responsible for the first black, at that time, we were called city council, being elected. And it's really because of the actors in TLC and Horace Sheffield, well, Buddy Battle, and many others were in the forefront of that. So that's when my first encounter came with Mr. Sheffield. Later on in life, he ended up being a mentor. As I stated earlier, him and my dad were friends, and they worked in the same plant. But later on in life, I ended up going to the same location at Ford, the Dearborn Iron Foundry, where Mr. Sheffield was one of the past chairman of the Dearborn Iron Foundry. And he just took me under his wings.
All that is part of a legacy. Jimmy, as we close, and I asked you before we started recording, you have a lot of young people, especially here in the Detroit chapter of CBTU, as we're honoring our first president of the Detroit chapter of the Coalition of Black Trade Unions Detroit chapter, Horace Sheffield. What would you want to leave with them, that what we can do to help carry on the legacy of Horace Sheffield Jr. and also the power of the vote?
Well, let me just say this, and let me just commend you, Mike. I think that is a step in the right direction. You know, if we don't understand and appreciate our past, we're doomed for failure. And we have to keep this going. I remember in 1979, Horace Sheffield, Bill Lucy, Brother Cleveland, and others got together to form the CBTU, was to make a voice. And, you know, that's almost 45 years, almost 45 years. We got to keep it going. We got to keep it going because somebody has to do what you're doing, to pass down messages, to let them know the fight. And even though that we're not the majority, we can take our minority and do more with it than the majority when we band together. But we can't do that if we don't know our history and don't understand, because it gives you hope. And we're in a much better position than they were. They had no history to lean upon. We have history to lean upon. And it's incumbent upon us to do that. You know, we cannot allow ourselves to go backwards. And you go backwards when you stay stagnated in unbelief. What I have been reading about the things that the Detroit chapter has been doing at CBTU, it's in the right direction. We just got to keep that going. You know, and also to educate. You know, part of what you're doing is educating, whether it's about community or about voting, or it's about education. You know, we can make our community better when we work together.
Thank you, Jimmy. And on behalf of the Detroit chapter of CBTU, which you were a strong member and supporter of, and our entire Region 7 of all our chapters here, and the entire CBTU organization throughout the world, thank you for being here. And we especially want to thank Mr. Horace Sheffield Jr. for his commitment, speaking truth to power, for his commitment to justice and to America and to our community. Thank you, Jimmy.